This first dupe, we're gonna need to take a little trip in the Dollar Tree. While we're here, we're gonna grab some of their plungers. I know, plungers, Brandy, what the hell? We need the wooden handle pieces on these joints, okay? We need them. I promise it will all make sense and it will be worth it. Just stick around, hang out, okay? We're gonna cut these down into 3 different sizes. You could use 2 plungers and pull this off. And if you don't have, or you're worried about using a miter saw, use a little miter box. I didn't really measure these out. I just kind of eyeballed it. And the 2 longer ones are just slightly bigger than the other. And then the smallest one is identifiably smaller than the other 2. And then I took some wire cutters and made some gouge marks in our rods. Now I stayed mostly to the edge, because we're not really going to see the center. We're going to wrap it in some ribbons. So don't waste your time putting a whole bunch of gouges in the center of your little rods. If you want to put a couple extra in there, just like I did, just to make it look more authentic, you go right ahead. That's really all I did. Just threw a few in there, like you can see right here. So once you have them looking like this, we're then going to take some antique Waverly wax. We're not going to have to put this all over our little dowel pieces. You just really want to get it inside of those little gouge marks. This is going to give us an authentic look once we put our white paint over this. Now you can, if you want to cover the whole thing, you go right ahead. This is what mine looked like when I was completely finished. I let these dry because antique Waverly wax is a little wonky if you don't and you try to paint over it. My paintbrush was not completely saturated in the paint. It was more on the dry end, but enough that I was getting coverage as I was going. I wanted to make sure that I didn't put too much on here that it would seep in our gouge marks, because then, you know, that just kind of defeats the purpose of the gouge marks. I do just want to let you know that if you do not want to use plungers and you want to go with a little bit of a thicker style, they do sell thicker rods at Hobby Lobby and Home Depot. But seriously, people, how amazing and authentic do these look? But we're not done yet. We are going to now take a little fan brush, okay? We're going to take a little bit of gray paint, and honestly, the gray is at your discretion. I just used whatever apple barrel gray paint I had sitting close to me, dabbed in my brush, and spun this little rod gently. And I did this down the whole rod, you know, well, till we got to the middle, because we weren't wasting time doing the middle. No one's going to see the middle. And then I dry brushed back and forth like this over the entire piece. And I did this for all 3 of these. And this is at your discretion. So when you're happy with the dry brushing, just stop. This is where I stopped. I let this dry. It took about 10 minutes. Now we're going to attach our ribbon. I picked some up from Dollar Tree. This was the only red that I could find there. It wasn't as dull as the dupe, but I don't really do exact dupes anyway. I do more of inspired dupes and put my own spin on it. So this is going to do the job just fine. I decided to glue everything together. I'm probably going to resell these little pieces at my little vendor space. And I'm just taking some wood glue here, attaching the pieces together. And I'm going to use a piece of twine to hold them in place. You're not going to see the twine. It's going to be underneath of the red ribbon. You can skip this part if you want. This way you can also switch things out as you go if you get tired of the red, or if you want to add more little dowel pieces. Completely up to you. I do want to share real quick though that make sure you're paying attention to the dowels as you're placing them if you're going to glue them together, because not all sides of the dowel are created equally, okay? Some sides look just a little bit better. And I was spinning them around, so if you see me moving around, that's because I wanted to make sure that the better looking side was facing outward as the decor spot. I did do a fancy little, you know, cut on the end of the ribbon and then just did one tie. I then decided I was going to take some tacky glue and adhere the pieces down. This is just a little envelope I had laying around, and I am cutting it to the shape of a tag so we can write our Merry Christmas on here. And I just tried to write as cursive and old school as I possibly could for our tag. This is probably one of my favorite Christmas pieces I have made so far this season. It is simple and elegant looking. I just love how it turned out, and I can't believe it came from plungers. When I seen this little guy on Etsy, people, I was like, I have to build him. And to do that, I'm taking this 2x3 I had laying around in my patio. You can pick these up from Home Depot. This piece is really raw and rustic, not sanded, anything. I just cut 3 different sizes, the head of course being the smallest size. And then once I had them all laid out, I thought, just in case you guys want exact measurements, let me go ahead and show you what I have here, because I just wung this, okay? I just wung it and eyeballed it and was like, this is good. We're just gonna cut it on down. Then I'm using Type-On wood glue and some hot glue to attach these. The hot glue is going to get these suckers stuck together immediately, and that wood glue is going to give you that long hold. I'm also, just for a little extra insurance, gonna bring in the stapler, and we're going to put some staples in the back of this piece just to make sure that it is held together really well. The amount of staples is of course completely up to you. I also recommend using a dowel. You can drill a hole in the center of these pieces and then place some wood glue in there. It will give you a little bit better of a hold. Always clamp your pieces down and let this dry 3 to 4 hours. I was on a time crunch here to get this finished, so I only let it dry for 30 minutes. And then I was very gentle the rest of the time I was holding it so the sucker didn't come apart. I found this white paint laying around, so I figured we'll just use this. I saved you the painting. You're welcome. We are going to take a fan brush though and give it a little dry brushing just all the way across, not stopping in the middle. We don't want to have like any abrupt pieces in our wood area, just kind of on the edges with the paint. And then I'm going to just fray this ribbon up for the scarf. To do that, I'm just cutting the edges of the ribbon off, and then I'm going to just pull out some of those pieces to give it that frayed look. If you are interested in more of a detailed tutorial about this little guy, I did create one of those. I will put a card up here for you. I will also link that video down in the description box. I don't always have the time on Fridays to really go into great detail on certain projects, so I started a little tutorial series where I do tutorials on Tuesdays a couple times a month, and I felt this guy needed a little bit more attention. So I do have a little tutorial on him. For the eyes, I used a permanent black marker and a little orange colored pencil for the nose, added some of these bells for the buttons, and he is so flippin' precious. I absolutely love this little guy. People, nothing about this project went as expected. It was a nightmare. I don't even know where to begin. It just didn't go as I had hoped. I guess we'll start our story at the beginning. I picked these beautiful bowls up at Ross on one of my browsing trips. These were only $5.99, and I didn't know initially what I wanted to do with them. I might have decoupaged them or something, but I've held on to them for quite some time. So when I seen this dupe, I was like, this is it. This is what we're going to do. We're going to turn these into beautiful candles. We're going to use my natural wicks. We're going to use my natural beeswax. I try to use all natural products. You're welcome to use Dollar Tree pieces if you want. I try not to use those things. And some good essential oils, because all essential oils are not created equally. You want to make sure that what you're using actually is 100% pure grade and not full of synthetic fragrances. And yes, it does matter. You are breathing these things in, but you guys do you. I'm just telling you how I roll and a healthy way to, fragrant your DIY candles up. Now, This was my first mistake. I used this tiny little glass container. I filled it all the way to the top. I went and I got it cooking, okay? Then while it's cooking, I'm taking our little wick, I'm gluing it down in the center, you know, doing all the things. Then I come back with the hot wax and start pouring it in. And I realized this is not enough. So I got the bright idea to throw a couple extra pieces in here because I watched YouTube, and YouTube told me that using a heat gun would warm the wax up. Well, all that did was throw the wax everywhere. And then it's so hot, it's sticking to my fingernails. And then I'm paying too much attention to cleaning up the table because I had blown this wax everywhere that I melted the bowl. And then the wax looked like a hot flipping mess. It wasn't even. So I let it dry and come back at it with the heat gun again to try and salvage this hot mess. Don't believe everything you watch on YouTube, people. You heard it from me first. Oh gosh. I really did try to salvage this, and I did the best I could. Okay. Oh God, it's sad. I'm sorry. Oh yes. Yeah, I came back in with the heat. It just, I don't know. It doesn't evenly adjust it. I don't know if I'm blowing it the wrong way. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm calm now. I did not think I was going to have that reaction rewatching the editing, doing this voiceover, but oh my gosh, it was just as funny doing this editing as it was going through it. I decided that at this point, we're just going to wrap this one up with our ribbon, throw the little greenery pieces and our pine cone on here to make the best of this dupe, and that is it for this piece. Little birds have told me people like to watch me paint, so we're gonna need some long signs to dupe these pieces, and I grabbed these scarecrow ones from Dollar Tree. I took the happy fall pieces right off the front of their faces. These were so big we're gonna film in the patio so I can get them all in the frame. We're gonna start by giving them a base coat of this charcoal, and for my spray paint lovers, I got your back. Once that dried, I went over it with a white and a gray paint. I just mixed them together for the background. This is what we are going to use as our base color. And for all of you judging me right now because I got my purple smock on, my Christmas themed sleeves, no socks. Mind your business, okay? In my creative zone. I was trying to get everything in the frame and there was just no easy way around it, okay? Anyhow, all I'm doing here is creating the faux wood slat look, and I'm just using a pencil and one of the other scarecrow boards to accomplish that. The dupe had 4 slats. I'm just using 3 with the thicker in the center and 2 small ends on the sides like this. And I did this for all 3 boards. And how I did that is I put one board on top the other slightly down so I could see where I marked them originally, and then use the other board to draw a straight line on the top. And these don't have to be perfect anyway. They're not the main showcase, and real wood isn't perfectly straight anyhow. Well, most of the time it's not. And the dupe itself, it's really vinyl. What the Etsy store was selling was the vinyl pieces at the very top. I just happened to like the decor that was in there. I'm like, we're duping this. Y'all know I ain't turning that Cricut machine on. Here is our color palette. We're going to use all these colors, nothing else, just differently for each tree. Each tree is slightly different than the other, which is another reason I love this so much. I'm using 3 different paintbrushes as well to accomplish these. We're going to start out by creating the stems, and I'm mixing some black and brown for this. Since the trees are big, we're going to need a thicker paintbrush. We are not trying to be here all day. And if I'm being 100% legit with y'all, it took me about 40 minutes to paint the 3 of these trees. Since the bulk of your paint is on the brush at the very first stroke, I'm starting at the bottom of the tree and then just gliding our paintbrush up, because we're not going to really see the top of the tree, but we will really see the bottom of the tree. And I did this for each one of the trees. Now here's where I mucked up a little bit. I got a little bit cross-eyed, I guess is a way to say this, because I had the boards directly next to each other and I misplaced the center in the last one. So I wasn't trying to repaint it and go over again. To adjust this, I erased the pencil line and moved over our faux wood slats. See how I'm showing you? And then came back in with some paint and just made its trunk a little bit thicker. So that trunk just has a little bit bigger of a bottom than the other trees, but it all worked out just fine. And at this point, if you're gonna make adjustments to the trunk, I would do that before you start putting on your branch tree pieces, the green spaces. For our first tree, I'm using this type of paintbrush. And we're going to go in with the dark green first. And I'm putting a healthy amount. And we're just going to do little stripes on the sides. Not completely straight. We're going to kind of curve them a little bit. And go just like this all the way down to the bottom of the tree. I'm not putting them right on top of one another. We do not want to actually smear our lines. And when they dry, you're welcome to go back up and add more in. So this way it looks like we are layering and just adding in the different levels that you would see when you're looking at a tree. While this was drying, I started on the second tree. I'm using this type of paintbrush for this tree, and the best way I can describe this is we're going to paint sideways birds. And we're putting a decent amount of paint on the end of this brush, and we are patting the brush, pushing it downward for the wings of our bird. And we're also going to flip the way the bird leans on our branch or on our stem or trunk as we go down the tree. And we're going to make these bigger as we go down as well, because we're going to add in another sideways bird and it's going to be a different color. So we're starting with the dark one first, and I do this all the way down. As you'll see, I alternate the sideways bird. I'm sorry, I don't know how else to describe that. It looks like, if you're looking at a painting, you know how they paint little birds? That's what these look like to me. And we're just going to make these, like I said, all the way down. Once I was happy with these, I took a little bit of the black and some of the green and then gave some of our birds an extra wing. I really just went in and created some extra pieces to give a different color variation and to hide some of the bigger gaps. When I was happy with that, I took the same brush and then used our lighter green, I think it's called celery color, and I'm going to then create more little birds. But we're gonna do it attaching the center of our bird in the center of the birds we already created, and just have their wings going a different way. So it creates little bundles of branches in different sections of our tree. I hope this makes sense. That's the best way I can think to describe it. And I did this for the entire tree. For our last tree, we're going to use a fan brush, and we're going to start out with our dark green and just tap the tip of the brush, and we're just going back and forth, starting very small at the top. And that's all we're going to do. Just tappity tap, 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 back and forth, creating straight lines with our fan brush, all the way down our tree. Since I usually start trees with a darker base, I did go a little bit wider in certain sections than I should have, but I like the end result. I wish I would have stayed slightly thinner at the very top than how I'm getting a little bit wide right here. Wish I would have done that for, you know, just to give you guys a little, you know, if you're going to do this, I would recommend just staying really skinny at the top. But at the end of the day, the result was beautiful. It took a little bit longer than I would have liked for the first tree to dry, but I needed to wait for that to dry so we didn't smear these sections. And I'm coming in with that lighter green and then just going in between the gaps with the same type of stroke to give this more depth. And then we're taking that same light color and bringing our fan brush in, and we're going to go back to our last tree. And here I did not move the camera. So I'm gonna just skip it on over to the section where I noticed that there was a problem. There we go. Pay no attention to the fact that most of the tree is already painted. I love y'all. I just forgot to move it. I wasn't trying to exclude you from the painting. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Okay. Let these completely dry. I guess that's going to really depend on how thick the paint is that you're applying, but it took mine about 10 minutes. And then we're going to come in with the fan brush on this tree to add in our faux snow, or our snow. I mean, we're painting snow, so is it really faux? I don't think it is. And you can be as creative as you want on this section and add as much as you want. Just make sure you stay in between your sections. And then when you get around to your edges, if you want to leave it or add more, it is entirely up to you. For this tree, we're just going to take the fan brush and go right across just like we did with the other two colors. We're just going to do that with the white, and we're going to do that on the edges of the colors to, again, make it look like we have snow on our tree. And back to the first tree, because we had to wait for this to dry, we're going to just do the same thing here. We're going to use our original paintbrush for this, not the fan brush, and add on our snow to the ends of our tree pieces. I'm gonna need a bunch of Dollar Tree's Tumbling Tower Blocks. To attach these pieces, we're gonna be using my favorite type on wood glue and some hot glue. And of course, my first attempt at using this hot glue, it dropped on my nail. You wanna talk about panicked? Mother. People, I was scared it was going to burn right through my nail. Oh my gosh. I did get it off. I was okay, but what a way to start the video. I was ready to throw in the towel right there. I was like, forget these Kirkland dupes. I almost lost a finger. Okay, enough about my near-death experience. We are going to attach 10 tumbling tower blocks together, and then we're going to take those rows and attach them together. We'll need 4 rows, so you'll use a total of 40 tumbling tower blocks to create this. You could probably use painter sticks or some thin trim if you have that as well. I had tumbling blocks on hand and I thought this would look pretty amazing for this dupe. I also allowed this to sit overnight because I knew I was going to be pressing on this and wanted to make sure the pieces did not fall apart. Plus I had a little extra time. Sometimes when I'm in a rush, I'm like 30 minutes and we gotta wing this. But luckily for me, for this particular project, I prepped. Once it dried, I applied Antique Waverly Wax. Now your staining preferences are entirely up to you. There are so many ways to do this, and feel free to do this prior. It is just easier for me to do it all at one time. It took me a whole 3 minutes to take a little sponge soaked up in some Antique Waverly Wax and get this on here. Let it completely dry, okay, before you come back with your pencil. You can use a ruler for this. I had this piece of wood just sitting around, and all I'm doing is finding the center here. And then I am going to also go right down the center. And then we're also going to go down the center sideways, horizontal ways, however you want to say it, vertical, all the things. I'm taking the tiniest paintbrush I own, and I'm going to add white paint onto it. And we're going to use this piece of wood to make sure these white lines are as straight as possible. Now, I highly recommend, if you guys own a white chalk marker, do you guys know what I'm talking about? Or some Posca pens, the paint Posca pens, use those instead of this. This was very tedious and it was a pain, and even though I sped this up, it took me about an hour to paint this snowflake. I was rather ticked because it was not as perfect as I wanted it to be. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I just know that for me, I am capable of so much better when it comes to the painting realm, and it just wasn't happening with the lines. So as I was going through the process, I had one of those markers. I went looking for it. And mine was dried out. I was so pissed. I was like, oh, well, we're just going to keep on painting. And then I'm just going to tell my people what I would have did if I had it. So I'm letting y'all know I love this project. At the end of the day, I love the end result and how it turned out. I wouldn't have mind doing the tree either, because if you check the Kirkland's website, they also had a tree like this. And I love both of them. I was going to do the set, but I was low on tumbling blocks, and then as I'm going through on this, I'm like, no way am I going to paint a tree too. As frustrating as this is, and my pen don't work, or my little chalk thing, but if I had it, we would have definitely did the tree, and this would have probably turned out a little bit neater than it did. But I absolutely love the end result at the end of the day. Let me know what you guys think about this one. For this project, you can really use any arched piece that you find. They carry them at Target. I was lucky enough to grab this at Dollar Tree when they had them. They even have unfinished ones at Michael's and Hobby Lobby. And since our dupe is black, I came in real lucky having this on hand. I did not have any black rope or twine or anything like that, string. So I just took some black paint and painted up the twine. While that was drying, I also covered in the little spot that we had in the middle here where it was stuck with our other piece. And I didn't have any of the exact greenery, so I took one of these little pieces and just cut them on up to add on to our little wreath that I picked up here from Hobby Lobby. This came in a pack, I think it was 4 or 6. I was just at Hobby Lobby and seeing these suckers and can't even remember. I then just attached everything onto our arch piece, and it is hard to believe this little piece came from Dollar Tree. Definitely a budget-friendly option compared to the $19.99 dupe. This was actually my favorite piece that I found on Kirkland's website to dupe. Now, our church is not going to have lights, but our little firehouse will, okay? The church is an ornament from Dollar Tree, and the firehouse is also from Dollar Tree. However, the firehouse lights up. So I grabbed that so you could see two options here. The church, of course, has glitter all over it, so I got to deal with that first. I'm taking everything off of this church, and then I'm taking it and giving it a nice old wash in the soap with hot water and some dish detergent. Once that dried, we're going to apply a light coat of Mod Podge. That's just going to stick down any of this extra glitter. If you're lucky enough to get a piece that the glitter is on there, you do not have to do all that, skip all this. Unfortunately, I had to. And if you got the spray Mod Podge, that works great too. I didn't have any of this on hand. And that extra step, it really only took me a whole 10 minutes. It wasn't like it added a lot of time onto this project. I then took some white chalk paint and covered both pieces. And if you want, you're welcome to do this as much as you want it. But to me, those houses look like they had different variations in color. So, and even some texture. So I decided to do the chalk paint first. And then once these dried, I took them outside to give them a nice coat of this spray paint for all my ASMR lovers. I didn't have the exact greenery, but I did have something sort of close in my stash. And I had these little branch pieces from something I picked up at Dollar Tree last year. The church itself had some white on the greenery, so I just dry brushed a little bit on these pieces and started gluing them on here. The more I started adding onto these little pieces, the more I wish I had little houses. More little houses to make more of these pieces. I love rustic things, and these just make me feel warm and fuzzy inside. Let me know what you guys think about these. I absolutely love how the firehouse looks with the lights inside. I was not expecting to love this as much as I do, but I absolutely adore these pieces. Introducing the easiest DIY I have ever done on my channel. I picked this up from Ross a couple years ago when I first moved into my house. I obviously painted this piece up, and it's been sitting in my closet, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I was going to throw it out. And here you can see I did rip the tag off, but I'm pretty cheap, so I know I didn't spend over $10 on this piece. We're going to take this chalked charcoal and just spray paint it on up. It took 2 coats of this to get a nice layer on here, but man, if that doesn't look amazing and super, super spot on to the type of decor piece Kirkland's had. I've been painting a lot of trees this Christmas season, and I figured let's do a scenery because I'm multi-talented like that. We're going to use a Dollar Tree canvas. You can use whatever size canvas you want. This is what I had on hand, and we're going to create our backdrop blending these 2 colors together, because once we flick our snow on here, we want a little bit of a contrast. We don't want just that white background, and the actual picture itself has it looking like there is definitely some different color than just a plain white canvas on there. Next, I'm just drawing some straight lines where the trees are going to be, like the different levels. And mind what I'm using. Listen, I just grab whatever, okay? I don't know where a ruler is around this joint, so I improvise. Above our trees, there is like a shadowing. So to create that effect, I'm mixing a little bit of brown and black together, and we're going to create that effect as well. I'm also making sure the brush is really dry when I go to apply this. So there's just a very minimal amount of paint on the brush. And then I'm basically starting below where I know the trees are going to be and just pulling the brush upwards and loosely, so we do not leave any end marks. We want it to just look like that fades right into our sky. Next, I'm just going to take my finger. You can use a paper towel or a baby wipe for this, whatever you want. I'm just taking my finger and just smudging the brown at the very top to blend it into the sky a little bit more. And I'm just going to pop up a picture right here so you guys can see the final look I'm going for. Next, I'm taking the brush again, making sure it's super dry, and I'm going to just add a little bit more of heavier color variations in certain spots. Next, we're going to start applying our black tree background, and I'm just using the same paintbrush I started using. We're going to go up and down and sideways. Up and down is going to indicate our tree tops, and sideways is going to indicate the width of our trees. You can do this in a patting motion or a thin line back and forth. Just make sure you do not have a ton of paint on the brush. Once I was happy with the treetops, I then just started taking the black paint and really filling in the bottom. I did some padding and I did some long strokes with the brush, just making sure I fill in most of the white canvas. I did not leave a whole lot of white, but just a little bit, because we are trying to make it look like there's different layers in our trees and levels and some depth. Before I started the next color, I decided to completely dry the canvas with the heat gun instead of waiting. I'm a little impatient. I'm sure some of you guys can relate. Who hates waiting for paint to dry? Nobody wants to do that. Next, I'm taking a really light gray. Any light gray will get this accomplished. I'm pretty sure it's still the same granite gray I used to blend the backgrounds. And a fan brush. I felt at this point, since we pretty much have our black background, now it's time to really kind of bring in that tree aesthetic, and fan brushes are perfect for doing that with trees. And I do not have this sped all the way up, so you can see that I am literally just taking the fan brush and I am angling it and tapping each side one at a time. I've painted so many different types of trees this year. I am confident that those of you that can't paint, if you couldn't paint before this year, I'm gonna have you paint a tree. Some kind of tree. Send me some pictures in my email or Instagram me. I want to see your trees. Next year, I'll have to do snowman or gift boxes or something. Every year, we'll just have to find something new for me to paint all holiday season to help you all along your journeys. There were not a whole lot of the gray trees in our painting, so I just did a couple just to have that extra layer in here. And then I'm going to just use a white paint to create our white trees. In total, it took me a little over an hour to paint this, and honestly, it's so stunning. It belongs on a much larger canvas, in my opinion. This is something you could keep up all year long in your house. If you got a spare toothbrush, I recommend that for this part. I did not, so I am just using a paintbrush, and we are flicking some snow all over the top of our canvas. I do hope you guys will give this a try. If you do, feel free to send me a message on Instagram or email me a picture. I love seeing people's DIYs and having them share those things with me. I know so many of you say you love to watch me paint, so I hope you're getting your fill of that this season. I surely have been enjoying these pieces I've been making for you. People, if you do not know me, one thing I can tell you about myself is I love tiny little things. And when I seen these tiny little snowman pieces, I was like, yes, yes, please. So we're going to take some regular beads and then these square beads I found at Dollar Tree, and we're going to make two different styles because I'm extra like that sometimes. And honestly, I just wanted to see if the round ones look cuter than the square ones, and I thought maybe you guys want to know that too. So I took a piece of twine and I put 3 of each on each piece of twine, and then I tied the top up real good, about 3 knots, and pushed the top of the beads to the very top. And I was a little worried. I was like, I'm scared these are going to move. I don't want its belly to be in its back. And I was like, we just going to glue these together and save me that worry. So when I'm photoing these at the end for the reveal, I don't have to go chase the pieces around. They're all facing the same direction. If you guys want to be wild and let your pieces do whatever they want, I support your decisions. Paying no attention to that little black spot on the bead. It may or may not have rolled into paint at some point during the video. Then I just took some white chalk paint and painted both of these pieces up. Once it was dry, I brought in a little dotting tool to give them their little accented buttons and face and smiles. I decided to create 2 different smiles because I wasn't sure which one was going to be the easiest for you guys to recreate, or for me, to be honest with you. The first one, we're going to kind of take the dotting tool and just drag along, making a U with a continuous paint stripe. I guess that's how you would say that. And to be honest, this method came out looking a little cheap. It did not look like this was professionally done. It may have been better to do with a real tiny decorative paintbrush or a nail brush. The second one turned out super flipping cute, and it was also way easier. We just make little dots all along the little smile line. Next, I'm taking a tiny paintbrush and some of this pumpkin orange and creating our little noses. I honestly did not care for these little things at all until I put the noses on there. Once I put the noses on there, they really came to life for me, and I was like, oh, I'm so happy I made these. Now, I really kind of schmoozed over this, people, because I am not your tassel DIY channel. Don't come to me looking for me to show you how to make a tassel, because I wing it. Okay, I know there are other creators out there who can do that. You go hang out with them to show you how to make tassels, because I'm not going to steer you in the right direction. I did the best job I could to add little tassels on the bottom of this piece. Here is the original, and here are mine.
The wonders of life got the prettiest side for everyone to enjoy. Standing up close by the Christmas tree, glimmering light, I am right where I wanna be. I will be home.
I know, people, you're looking at me like, Brandy, what the hell? Listen, I promise you're going to love this. Just stick around, roll on with me, okay? We're going to use some painter sticks, and I picked these up from Home Depot for $1.48 for this pack, or Home Depot. Sorry. We're going to take some. Now, if you want, use your miter box or a miter saw. It will get the job done. I was being super lazy and applying as much wrist strength as I could to cut this down with these miter shears. I will tell you, this is not the easiest method, but it is flippin' freezing here in Pennsylvania, and I was not trying to go outside and saw anything up and then have sawdust, and it was a situation. I had to choose my battles here. So I used the miter shears to cut this down. So for our first one, I'm using the entire length of the arrow piece minus that wonky tip. I hate that wonky tip. I hate keeping that on whenever I use painter sticks. It's got to go. The next one I cut down to about 6 inches. We're going to use the first arrow that you've seen in the Walmart picture and the last, because they're kind of similar. I'm just cutting the middleman out, okay? And in case you're wondering what I'm doing, let me explain. I do not have enough wrist strength to be able to chomp right through the painter stick. Some of you guys may be able to do that, power to you. What I do is I will press down on one side, flip it, make sure it's in the exact same spot, press down on the other side, and then I can usually just break off and then snip the extra bits. Like I said, it is much easier to use the other pieces, but I wasn't going outside and I try not to get all that sawdust in my house. I don't want to saw anything in the house. But I also thought this would be a really nice option for those of you that do not like using the big tools, or even those of you that use these miter shears and struggle with wrist and hand strength. This is how I work around this. And another quick little tip, even if you're watching me do this and you're like, I don't think I can even try this. If you like the miter shears, try wrapping a hand towel around the ends of the handles as you're pressing to give you that extra thickness on the back ends. For the arrows, I use the 45-degree angle to create a triangle. And then for the very ends of the arrow, I'm using the 60-degree angle on these. And I cut all of these the same size. Now, I'm talking about can't cut all the way through. That one I actually did, and I had to go find it. It went flying across the room. Once I found it, I just measured it to size and then cut the rest of the pieces down for the 2 arrows. I started by attaching the 2 arrowheads, and I let them dry for a couple minutes before I attached the bottom parts. Now, I would recommend, because I got a little bit turned around with the bottom parts, make sure you have them in the right spot before you start gluing them on. And then make sure, this is really important, that your glue gun didn't turn off in the middle of you trying to glue this together. Otherwise, this is going to happen to you. For this next part, we're going to bring in the stapler. If you do not have one of these, I recommend using some wood glue to make sure that your pieces stick together really well, because the hot glue is not going to do you any justice down the long road, making sure your projects stay together for a long time. For a brown color, I'm mixing both of these together. You could use antique Waverly wax, but since some of the pieces had the little measuring spots from the ruler side of the painter stick, I wanted to cover that up, and I figure I'm just going to use paint. And I'm then taking a little bit of brown mixed with some black to give it some extra accents in different spaces. Next, once this dried, I took a crusty bit paintbrush, added a little bit of white paint, and then gave this some distressing. And I made sure to distress the way that the wood was going. I feel like that looked a little bit more like our picture. So our arrows are basically done at this point, right? Wrong. You're absolutely wrong. We're going to add our Christmas decoration. For our large arrow, we're going to make a messy bow using the Dollar Tree's metal lace. If you cannot find this stuff, Hobby Lobby also carries it. You're going to pay a little bit more than $1.25. I am sorry about that. But of course, seriously? I swear, as much as I love this stapler, sometimes it just does whatever it feels like doing. That'll fix your ass. People, sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do. I started gluing the rest of the pieces together for our large arrow. Of course, it's the last project that is giving me crap. And it's not even really the project itself. It's the part that I hate, which is trying to decorate it. I'm like, oh, just get on here. Ribbon and bows are like my nemesis in the DIY world. It's just not my forte. So I'm already frustrated trying to create it because I want it to look pretty for you guys so you see my vision. Anyhow, I made a regular messy bow with regular ribbon on our smaller piece, and then I added some little pine cones from this little pack I picked up from Dollar Tree. But real quick, people, what the hell is this thing? It looks like some type of weird sea crustacean. And Dollar Tree was like, that looks good, toss it in the bag. I'm sorry. Anyhow, here is the original one, and here are my dupes.
Last year I thought about how things can come around just like that if everyone is here to celebrate one day. We have our ups and downs, but when
We're painting another tree. Just in case you guys thought I was done, I'm not we're gonna need a Dollar Tree canvas for this. And if you've struggled to paint any of the other trees I've created so far this holiday season, I hope you'll be able to make this one. We're gonna start off by using an antique or a vanilla white. Off-white would be fine as well, even some plaster from Waverly, and paint the entire canvas. Next, we're gonna take a little bit of this melted chocolate and put it on our crusty paintbrush to give a little bit of a light distressing in just a few areas on this canvas, because to me, the dupe looks like it had some of this going on in the background. If you want to skip this step, go right ahead, but we're just taking a tiny bit on the dry, crusty bit paintbrush and just swiping it along. Now here, I'm just taking a pencil and kind of measuring where the middle is, and I'm just putting two little marks. So I try to center our tree as I sketch it out. I'm starting with the top section of the tree, then the middle, and then the bottom. It looks as though the picture itself, it starts from the top, and then with each paint stroke, it pulls from the next layer of the tree. I did not have a gray color that I really loved, so I mixed some black and white together to get this. And don't have that much on your brush. Have this much on your brush. You don't want a whole lot. And a little tip for creating this tree. The way you hold your paintbrush with each stroke will affect the size of the tree. So on the sides, we're going to use the fat part of the brush, and then we're gonna go sideways to get a thinner stroke with the bottom of each layer of the tree. Just like that. You do not have to do this part, but I just wanted to be safe and make sure that I didn't smudge the layer that I did, and I dried it before I started on the next one. And I do want to say I wasn't 100% happy with the way this turned out. If I had to do this again, I would use a larger paintbrush. And at the very bottom, I wouldn't do such a bell shape. I would go more straight down, even though the picture to me looked like it kind of belled out, but it didn't turn out that way. Maybe because my brush was thinner. Most of you know I love to try to give you the exact reason that I have the mistakes or the struggles that I do, so you are able to avoid them and create this a better way. And I also think I could have went a little bit more neutral on the background paint. This is more of a yellow hue to me, but at the end of the day, I like to kind of say my dupes are usually inspirations and not exact dupes, because I like to be creative and put my own spin on things, you know? I did not have any gold paint, so I just used some of this Dixie Belle gilding wax, but gold paint would have been fine. I just am using what I had on hand here to create the star. And honestly, having paint would have been so much easier than using the gilding wax. It is not the easiest material to paint with a paintbrush. I decided against putting this in a frame. You're welcome to put it in a frame, or even take some thin pieces of trim and cut them down to size, paint them black, and put around the edges. That would look super nice too. I think my version turned out pretty good for $1.25. Here's the original, and then here's mine. I made the comment last week that one of the DIYs was the easiest DIY I've ever done on my channel. I've managed to top that, people. Welcome. Dollar Tree has started selling pillowcases. So this little gem was only $1.25. And if you didn't know that, you need to start hanging out with me on my browsing channel. That link is down in the description. Come shop with me, okay? People, I was super thrilled to open this on camera and give you all my 100% authentic opinion of this. For the size and for what you're getting, $1.25, decorative use, fabulous. If you plan on using this to cozy up with, not a good idea. The material is not the best, and it's got a really cheap zipper. So if you're going to be having this in a heavy traffic area, it is real possible that that sucker will just pop right off there and break. You could stuff this with whatever. I had some tiny accent pillows laying around that I popped on in here that did the job just amazingly. It's not an exact dupe, I know, it's an inspiration piece, but honestly it is the same type of style as the Walmart piece. If you want to create an exact one, get your Cricut and your vinyl out and you got this. But I absolutely love how this turned out. Hi people, I just want to interrupt your video real quick with a nice little update. I'm sitting here editing this and I'm actually holding on to a pillow. And in the video I'm like, I said, you know, not to cuddle up next to it. It's still like, the material's not the best. It's not the coziest material ever. But I tell you what, like, it's been tossed around this living room I don't know how many times and some more stuff, and I just wanted to kind of pass on that if you were ever hesitant about picking these up at Dollar Tree just to have them around for decorative use, we're in July and this has been sitting pretty much in the same spot since I filmed this video. So I just kind of wanted to let y'all know, if you follow me at all over Browse with Brandy, I do little reviews or give you guys information over there, what works, what doesn't work, if I grab things in the store, or, you know, help you save money if I can. And it's all an extension of this DIY channel. So I just wanted to kind of give you guys some information. If you see these at Dollar Tree this season, they might not be the best thing to cuddle up to, but it's keeping on one ticking up on this love seat. Here is another inspiration piece. I did not have this exact fabric, but I love the dupe itself. So I picked up some of these fabric gift bags from Dollar Tree. They had several different styles. This was my favorite. And we're going to just stuff this sucker on up. Now, I would recommend using rocks or sand if you have that. I did not have any of that on hand. I did, however, have a big giant bag of seashells. Don't ask. I don't know. Random things that crafters own. I apparently had these in my stash. The dupe itself had some bells on the end of the twine that's wrapped around the little bag piece. So to get this twine through my little bell pieces, I took some painter's tape and wrapped it around the edge of the twine and then tried to shove it through these tiny little holes. And usually this works just fine. However, this was a real pain. It took me a good 10 minutes to get 2 bells shoved on this little twine. And then when I did, I was so frustrated, I accidentally cut the twine short. You want to talk about pissed? I was like, here we go again. So I saved y'all the struggle of me trying to get this bag on here. And to save me from making the same mistake again, I cut the rope pretty long, or the twine pretty long, and then wrapped it around and then put the bell on the bottom and cut it to size. Every week this month I'm wondering what DIY is going to make me tap out, and this week it was going to be bells. I just took some floral pieces that I had, or greenery pieces, all the things. I had some twigs and just started shoving them on down in here. My friend Sammy over at Unicorns Dust Designs always says the more variety you have in there, the higher end it looks. I don't know if mine necessarily looks high end compared to this one, but I do love how this piece turned out. People, if I'm being really honest, I didn't just find one, I found 2 ladders that really inspired me for this project. These are some Dollar General yard stakes. They are roughly about 3 foot and they only cost $1. Well, they cost $1 when I purchased them last summer. They might be $7.99 now. Who knows? We're going to cut the very end off of these pieces, and then I'm just measuring them to make sure that they are the exact same size. Because knowing me, if I don't do this part, I'll have one really long side and then one that's not really long. Next, I'm measuring the width. So this way, when I cut the 3rd yard stake, I get 4 even pieces. And I cut them around 10 inches. I will tell you, you will actually need 4 yard stakes for this. I happen to have an extra piece because I use these all the time in my projects. So I only cut the 3rd yard stake into 3 sections, and then I had 1 extra piece about the size that I needed and just trim that up. Here I'm just measuring to make sure the entire ladder is the exact width apart from top to bottom, and then I'm taking some wood glue in the spaces that I put the little steps. And these I space roughly about 8 inches apart from the other one. To make sure these are really attached, we're gonna bring in our nail gun. I just wanted to take a minute and show you the one that I use. I have a lot of people always ask what I'm using. This is the one that I'm using. I'm a big Ryobi fan. Hey Ryobi, don't forget about the girl over here. One day they're going to notice me, people. One day. If you're scared of nail guns, then don't do this part. Just take some clamps and clamp down on each section and wait 24 hours. You should be good to go. The wood glue should hold this in place. Don't go stepping on it though. Don't be using it as a real ladder, okay? To be safe, I let this dry in my house because it was cold, people, okay? It was cold. I let this dry in my house for 24 hours. Use whatever stain you want. I'm using Antique Waverly Wax. It's one of my favorites. I always like the end finish of this. And I let it dry for about 30 minutes. And then I'm just taking a dry brush and going over this with a little bit of white chalk paint. I rarely keep pieces I make anymore, but this is going to be staying in my house. I love how this looks in the corner and starting my Christmas decorating with it. If I was better at the greenery and the florals, I would have put a nice big piece on the side like they had in one of the Pinterest pictures, but instead I just put some down at the bottom with some more decorations. So you guys are not going to believe me, but we're not cutting wood for this. I know. Calm down. Listen, I had a bunch of these laying around. Last year, Dollar Tree had these little triangle pieces, and I had the backings because I hoard everything. Okay, stop judging me. I know some of you do it too. And we're going to just attach a little piece on here for a stand. Now, if you want to use wood for these, absolutely go right ahead. You will get the same exact result. I'm taking some paper I had from Hobby Lobby, and I traced the tree on here, or the triangle. I traced the triangle on here, and I'm gonna just rip right inside of where I have the trace marks. If you want to use a napkin for this, you go right ahead. I would recommend painting your piece at that point so this way your napkin shows up. I wanted to keep the brown around the edges, so I did not touch this. I did continue ripping this as I went along before I started to decoupage this on here. I wanted to make sure it was exactly the size I was happy with before I applied the piece. Because I'm keeping the piece brown, I did not want to have a bunch of Mod Podge all over this. And the only way to get an exact application is to just paint the paper. And you're going to get one shot at that when you're doing something like this. So you're going to want to make sure that you have all of your Mod Podge spread out on here evenly, not overly excessive, because you don't want it smooshing out of your paper and then getting on the wood. At that point, you'll probably have to go over and paint it. Like I said, I wanted to keep this completely neutral. I didn't want to touch the piece, and that was just the look I was going for. You guys do whatever makes you fuzzy inside. And I didn't use any fancy tools or anything to apply the piece. I just used my finger and rubbed it around. Like I said, I wasn't trying to actually have any of the Mod Podge come popping out the side. I did not want to get it on the piece. For the ribbon, I'm just taking some of this pretty vintage lace looking ribbon I picked up from Dollar Tree, tying a little bow. I did end up gluing this down just to keep it in its place because it's triangle, so it's kind of riding up to the top as I went. So I just glued it down and added a little bit of greenery. This was just a random little piece I had tossed in my stuff. I said I was a hoarder, right? Okay, listen, you never know when things like this are going to come in handy. But I absolutely love how this final result came out. Super simple. And like I said, if you wanted to paint the piece and you wanted to do a napkin, this would still work out just fine. I think this is one of my favorite pieces I've ever found on Pinterest. Now, mine's going to be a little bit different, of course. We're going to use these smaller pieces I picked up in a bag from Hobby Lobby on one of my browsing trips. Are you guys hanging out with me on my browsing channel? Because if not, you're missing out on things like this. And I got these on sale. Okay, moving on. A while back, I used one of these. This is a wood burning marker, okay? I used one of these and I tested it with an actual wood burner. The results of this were pretty impressive. So instead of possibly burning my house down or losing an eye from heat burn, I decided to use this instead of my wood burner. And people, I was extremely skeptical about this. Even though I had really good results with the marker, I used that on regular wood. I didn't use it on like little log pieces like this. So I was nervous, but I had hopes. But I was extremely nervous to use the wood burner because as you can see, it looks like the bark is kind of moving. I was scared that that wood burner would actually catch these on fire and start burning. I know you guys would love to see that and how I react to that, but not in today's show. All right. Next, we're going to bring in the heat gun. So when you're happy with your design, you're just going to use a heat gun, regular old little heat gun. That's all we're doing here. I purchased this joint on Amazon and the marker on Amazon. I think the marker is linked down below in my Amazon store. And I can't stress how simple this is, people. Now, if you have a stencil, use a stencil if you're not really good at drawing. Honestly, mine was not the best here either. I just wanted to give you guys the option of freehanding it if you want it to. But honestly, if you have stencils and you want to color them in, it will work the same. This marker actually does not bleed that bad. Now, on this piece of wood, and the other one where I make the Y, as you can see, some of the little pieces of bark were kind of shedding off. And that became a little bit of a pain. It didn't take me a whole lot of time to do this project, roughly about 30 minutes. But that was me kind of going back over and filling in and trying to get the bits that were consistently getting on the marker off the marker from the wood. Once this little piece was done and I had the O done, I was like, these kind of look a little plain. So I went back and looked at the Pinterest piece and noticed the O had some decorations on it. So I just decided to add in some on the top here. And of course, these bits, they were such a pain. And I did not have this issue at all using the product on wood itself, just this, because the wood was just frying off here, the bark, whatever you guys want to call it. I really love these pieces and how they turned out. I honestly have another idea for them coming up in the spring. I plan on doing, hopefully I can remember to do it. I gotta put it on my list of things to create. The Pinterest picture had some red ribbon around the bottom of all three of them. It also had them sitting inside of candle holders. I decided to just leave mine standalone, and I didn't have any of a matte color ribbon. I just had the shiny red ribbon and added it to the bottom of the J and the Y. And I really like how these pieces turned out. I feel like here recently there has been a DIY in every video that makes me want to quit YouTube. Well, this one. Welcome. This one did. So here we go. This is the end of a plunger I had laying around in my stash, and I thought this would be a nice dowel. It's not a skinny one, you know, it's a bigger one, because I didn't want to create an ornament. I wanted to create an actual decorative piece. First mistake. Okay, first mistake, which means we're going to have to use more ribbon or bows or fabric, because I am horrible at using all those things. If you are not familiar with me, hi, my name is Brandy. I am bow, fabric, challenge. Ribbon challenge, like, it is not my forte. So I took some fabric and ribbon, I cut strips, and then I started tying it. Okay, this is my first mistake. I was just tying it with no rhyme or reason and couldn't wrap my head around why my ribbon was like backwards. I'm like, this don't look right. It doesn't make sense. So here I go. See how it's backwards? You can see where my fingers are. I was not happy with it. All the colors were on the opposite side, so I took it all off. I'm like, we're going to start this again. And then we're going to put the strips the opposite way. So I put them backwards. And then I was careful with how I started pulling them through the little pieces. So this way they were actually facing me and not facing the back of our little dowel. So what I thought was going to be a 5-minute project took me 3 days, because y'all don't even know, like, I did not want to, these pieces were ripping on me. I do not recommend using ribbon. Definitely, if you're going to use ribbon, don't use Dollar Tree ribbon, use higher quality ribbon, and use fabric. This was a pain. At one point, Wes came down to check on me and he was like, how you doing? And the ribbon just snapped and he just started laughing. I was like, I'm gonna rip my hair out. It's like, it shouldn't be this difficult. So yeah, not a full 3 days, but I would try and work on it 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there, and stuff would just keep happening. So I was like, forget this project. I got other things to do. And off it went. So once I finally got to this point, I was like, oh, I did not want to cut these too short, because if I did and I had to start wrapping more ribbon, I knew y'all were going to see me toss this tree in the trash. So I went very carefully, gingerly, as my daughter would say, very gingerly down the sides of the tree, cutting this at an angle. And it was going pretty good, okay, until I realized, like, this thing was floppy. So scared to death I was going to screw this up even more, I just started hacking at the sides. I was like, I know it's not supposed to look like that. And I do have fabric spray stiffener somewhere, just don't know where it was. And like I said at the time, I was like, ooh, this project. But it started standing up on its own, people. I was like, oh, the shorter I cut it, the more it's actually turning out. And I started loving it. And I was like, this wasn't so bad. But yeah, it was. It was not bad. I glued a little star at the top with a bow to finish the piece off and attached it to a little round piece. And it really is an adorable decor piece. But I will never be making another one like this. People, were you worried I wasn't going to paint a tree this week? Because in case you were, I'm here to prove you wrong. We're painting another tree, and it's the last one of the season. So I hope you guys love it. We're going to be using this tray to recreate this piece. The original was on like a tapestry or piece of fabric. We're going to take some of this Admiral Blue and some of this Ocean chalk paint, and we're going to even add a little dash of black in there and mix these up. Not thoroughly. We want it to have some different color variations. So as we go, our tray looks like a sky. And in case you're like, Brandy, why are you doing acrylic and chalk? I try to tell people, so chalk will give you a one coat, okay? Acrylic is not. And chalk doesn't always have the colors you want. Acrylic has more of a variety. So when I do that, I like to mix them. And it also helps me just getting that one coat. If you do acrylic only, you're going to probably have to do more than one. I'm taking this little stencil that I have from Dollar Tree. I cut it in a little piece because this looks like a snowflake to me. And I'm just going to put this on the corners of our tray. I was really going to leave the outside of the tray blank, but then I thought we just need to add a little bit of something to tie in the center to the outside. So I just added some additional little whimsical looking dots coming off of our snowflake. And I just did that on the very outside, not the side with the handles. I'm just using a dotting tool to accomplish this, and most packs of dotting tools, if you buy them by the pack like I do, they come in different sizes. So if you are not sure if your pressing application is going to give you different size dots as you go down, you can switch up the dotting tools. For this background where we're creating the snow, I would recommend using a toothbrush, smearing up some paint on it, and then flicking it with your finger. I did not want to get snow anywhere else on the tray but the background. So I'm using a dotting tool, this bottle cleaner, and a couple other various methods to just get some authentic looking snow on here. Then I'm finding the center of the tray and marking it because this is where we're going to put our tree stem. For the entire painted piece, this is the type of paintbrush I'm going to use. I'm starting with the snow at the very bottom, and this, because I'm using chalk paint, I am going to have to do several little strokes. I'm not thinning it out by any means. And again, I like using chalk paint when I'm doing certain things like this because acrylic will have me having to go over it. And because this is such a dark paint and I'm using a white, I only want to have a one-shot application.
Jingle bells ringing in my ear. Jingle bell, a sound that's oh so dear. Frosty the snowman is all around town. Watch out for reindeers are falling down. We stay up waiting for Santa tonight. He climbs down the chimney.
You can bring this down as far as you want. Because I'm doing it on a tray, I want it to still have some of those snow pieces at the bottom, so I stopped giving it a little bit more than a half an inch. I'm then using this random piece I had laying around to just create our tree stem. You can use a ruler, just anything straight really, to have that brush able to be pressed up against and give you a fairly straight line. And then I'm just adding a little bit of thickness at the very bottom of the tree. I will tell you that out of all the trees I have painted so far this season, this was definitely the easiest. Maybe because I only used one color, but it was really easy to make. Overall, it took me about an hour to do this tray. I used a heat gun to get most of it dry in the process of switching the colors between the blue and the white. For the branch / leaves section that we're painting here, I just decided to go back and forth with the paintbrush. So you'll see me doing two different strokes. One from the out to in, and then from in to out. This is just giving the actual ends a little bit different look, and it's going to bring more of a 3D appearance to your picture versus having the same paint stroke throughout all the levels. The original piece has some gaps in it. I did not want to do that for this just because it was on such a smaller scale, and honestly, you could use this decoratively. I am going to use the dishwasher safe Mod Podge as the sealer for this part, but I personally think it would just look better hung up on the wall. After I let this dry for about 15 minutes, I came back in with my Dixie Belle's gold gilding wax. If you have a gold paint, by all means, go right ahead and use that. This just happens to be what I have on hand in a gold color. And I'm using a dotting tool to apply this stuff, and I'm just literally kind of smearing it back and forth. There's no rhyme or reason. I'm just trying to make it look like little blurs of gold balls. To add a little bit more depth on the piece, I did take some of this gold gilding wax, put it on my finger, and rub it all around the handles and the outside of the tray. So this way, if someone did want to hang it on the wall, it kind of gives you a little bit of a pop from the picture to the ends of basically where it's framed. People, as always, thank y'all so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed these Christmas dupes in July and it got you a little in the spirit in this warm weather. Until next time, bye!